What's the number one challenge for businesses today?
Workforce development, attracting, recruiting, and retaining people.
And that's why we created this podcast, designed for the frustrated CEO, the under-resourced recruiter, or the overworked manager, to give you the tools to tackle those WTF moments.
It's time to open another workforce therapy file.
Welcome back to the Workforce Therapy Files. This episode is a special Valentine's Day episode. But don't get too comfortable. We're talking about breaking up.
Oh.
Breaking up is hard to do.
Valentine's isn't good for everybody.
That's true. I call it Stupid Day myself.
Oh,
Stupid day.
Wow.
Wow.
That's sweet.
Every day's Valentine's Day at my house.
Somebody's been burned.
So nobody needs a day.
Yeah.
Not when everything's hearts and flowers.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about breaking up. And by breaking up, we mean separation of employment.
That's right. Because sometimes things don't work out.
Yeah. But we need to do it with dignity.
Yeah.
So let's jump into that.
Yes.
Has anyone on this podcast ever let someone go?
Yes.
I'm raising my hand.
Yes.
Yeah. Any leader has, but the two of you have probably let a few more than I have go.
So have we let people go?
Well, have you been the bearer of the bad news?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes.
I've been the receiver as well.
And how do you sleep the night before?
Not well.
No. In fact, I've had nightmares like about being hurt or them being hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I feel like if it ever becomes easy to do, you're in the wrong job,
Right.
right?
Well, and, in situations where it is a surprise, like in some situations you have to let folks go because of performance, right? Expectations aren't being met. It shouldn't be a surprise.
It shouldn't be a surprise ever.
But for those that it is a surprise, like a layoff or the business is closing or, I don't know, some other horrific situation that really isn't in anyone's control, that's the worst, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Especially, I know that when I first got out of college, I was part of a layoff of over 100 people. And here I was out of college for like a year and a half. Some of these people had worked for that company for years, had really treated it like family. I know we've talked about how family is an ick word for us, but in the workplace. But it was really hard to be that person to say, I don't know why I get to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm not on the other side of this table right now. And I hate that somebody else is, right? There's a lot of compassion. I think when we're talking about terminations, we're making the decision that however justified the decision might be, we are having a conversation with somebody who's not going to be able to get their next paycheck potentially, right? And that's how they pay their bills and support their family. And when you do all of the other things we talk about to engage your workforce, you come to know those things about somebody.
Right.
You've met their spouse, or you know that their kids play soccer and that soccer is not cheap, right? Like you know
them as a human.
Yeah, you learn things about them. So I think it's important whenever we are coming to the decision to terminate somebody that you think about these reasons. And Molly, I'm so glad you said it shouldn't be a surprise, right? For situations of performance, the idea that there would ever be a termination and somebody had poor performance and not know they were performing poorly, to me is a head scratcher.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on the leader.
Yeah. So one of the, you guys have teased me for my love of TikTok, but I do love TikTok. Sometimes I make TikToks, but I'm not going to give you that handle because they're embarrassing.
What?
I'm not going to do it.
You cannot throw that out there and tease us like that.
Yeah.
You don't want to see them. They're cringe for sure.
Unforgivable.
That's what the kids call it, cringe. But anyway, I saw this this TikTok of, and now it's gone viral, and news sources have picked it up, of this lady who is a remote employee, and she is recording herself. She assumed something was happening. She was either going to get laid off or terminated that day because she got a meeting notification from people she had never met, right? So she
Just don't accept it.
just like, sorry, I'm busy that day.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But it was an HR person, and this is my justice for Brittany is what I'm calling it, because I know that's a trending hashtag. But so her name is Brittany, and she is making this video, and she is recording these individuals who have never met her talking through the termination, right? And
I'm sad and mad already.
Yeah, and they're referencing performance. And so she cites back, here's all the things I know that my performance was being measured by. And my manager didn't know we were going to have this conversation. Why is my manager not part of this? So everything about watching this made my this is not how we do things heart race, right? So I think it's important as individuals who are making termination decisions that you have got to make some considerations. If somebody is performing poorly and you haven't told them, that's on you, not them.
100%.
Right? If somebody has had poor behavior, there should be an opportunity where you're addressing that poor behavior with them.
And setting expectations.
Before term.
That's right.
Right? So you've done something to tell them what you expect, either in handbook, orientation, feedback whenever you see somebody start to skew off script, right? Or you have an opportunity to say, hey, I saw that this happened, or I've heard that this happened. Tell me from your perspective, what happened. Giving somebody an opportunity to share their story before you make the decision to term is really important. And one of the main reasons why it's really important is because when you're communicating to somebody that their employment is terminated, it's not supposed to feel like a surprise, right? Now,
Unless it is.
Molly mentioned layoffs, and I think those are the exceptions.
Yes.
Right? But even then, how are you communicating things about how your company is performing? People should know about that anyway.
That's
it shouldn't
fair.
be a surprise that the company is having hard times. They should know that, like, look, if we don't meet these metrics, we're going to have to make some different decisions. Like, what are those things that you are forecasting to happen for your company? And how do your people know that their work is connected to the success of that or the failure of that?
I think when it happened to me, I was part of a big second wave of layoffs for a large financial institution, worldwide presence. And I was in a project-based role. So my big project for 2 years had just ended. There was nothing on the docket for the next thing. And I thought, you know what? I bet I kind of had that feeling.
Sure.
Just because I knew it was coming. I was in between projects. I was an easy out. I was an easy number. Now, the way that it was delivered to me was not with dignity, in my opinion.
Yeah. Tell me the story.
So when I was notified, I was actually on vacation.
Oh,
now,
come on.
We were in a stage of life that staycations were our thing, right?
Yeah.
So luckily, I guess I was lucky. We were at home. So they called me in off of vacation to deliver this message to me, which I don't think was fair. I understand and appreciate why they think that was a good time, but it wasn't. So when I think about this conversation that you and I have had, Jamie, about separation with dignity, that's one thing that you are calling me in off of vacation to deliver the message that I'm being laid off.
Yeah.
So when I got the phone call...
It could have waited till Monday.
Right. It could have. And it was the Thursday of my vacation. I'll never forget it. Right? It's one of those moments that was a game changer in my life for many reasons. But I had given 11 years to this company, and I thought to myself, this is what you're giving me back? I can't even be respected for my time off, for the effort that's been put in. And all night, I was playing the pity party. I was the, poor, pitiful me. And then all of a sudden, my brain just switched to the people that were going to have to deliver this message to me. One who had only been my boss for a couple of months. So there wasn't a lot of relational depth built yet. And then their boss, whom I knew, but I didn't have any direct conversations with outside of strategy, if you will. And I thought, this is a life changer.
Yeah.
They're having to deliver this message to not only me, but several others on the same day and time. And I thought, that has to be an awful experience for them because they know what they're getting ready to do. And I would never think that these two individuals that had to deliver that message to me were being malicious about it.
That's right.
It was completely business. Totally get that and respect it. But at the same time, how it was delivered that it was going to need to, what if I wasn't home?
Right.
Would they have asked me to come in from wherever I was? That wasn't handled correctly. When I walked into the office that morning I was escorted from the door, like I had done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, I think it was 10,000 people. It was 9 or 10,000 people that got laid off nationwide at the same time.
It's a big number.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an experience that taught me, while it was a surprise, I kind of, I saw the writing on the wall.
As often you do in a breakup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You get those emotions,
Yep.
that gut that you have. Sure. You're like, I bet that's going to be what happens. And sure enough, what did you call yourself?
Clostradamus.
Clostradamus. That was the emotion that I had.
You knew something was happening. You didn't know exactly what, but
right.
you felt something was coming.
It was close.
Yeah, you were close.
But I don't believe that there was 100% separation with dignity because of the lack of respect of the situation and timing that was in for me.
That's right. Because you're on vacation.
I was on vacation.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys know this, but I was married at the end of 2007. My husband got laid off 2 days after we got married. He was working for a home builder, and it was a housing crisis.
Yeah.
Right? Everything was coming to a halt in a lot of different ways, affecting a lot of different industries. I completely understand why the layoff happened. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Because the company went down to a small shell of employees that were supposed to bring it back. And it was seriously one of those oh my gosh, he had to take that call right in front of my parents. We had just gotten married. We were opening our wedding gifts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So wasn't he off work?
He was. And his boss was at our wedding.
Shut up.
True story. But he was a friend of his. And so he called because he was like, I don't know what your honeymoon plans are. So before you make them, I didn't want he was like
2 days after your wedding.
He was in this.
What
really
are your honeymoon plans? Haven't they been planned for I don't know, a year?
No, because we didn't make any. Because we got married at a time where we were going to wait until the following year and everything else.
Listen to me getting all defensive for you.
Yeah. But I think it was one of those before you guys go and do something that's going to cost a lot of money, I want to tell you this now. Wow. Didn't want to tell before the wedding because we were getting ready to get married. So for sometimes they're in a situation where there's not a good time to have this conversation.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? But I do think that it takes us to the next place is let's consider the person. It's about asking questions to try to determine how is the best way for me to deliver this information. And there's a lot of things to take into consideration based on the reasons that you're terminating. So a layoff is an exception. There are times where you have to communicate that. But I've also seen some examples that are pretty, I'm going to call it trash, okay? There is one huge company that basically said, we're going to send emails either to your personal email or your work email. If you get it to your personal email, that means you don't work here anymore. If you get it to your work email, you need to be back here on Monday. That's trash, right? Mm-hmm. There should be a conversation with somebody from someone to say, I know this a lot. I care about you as a person. There should be some sort of experience where somebody's receiving that information from someone they know, right?
I just want to interject really quick. I think the hashtag "That's Trash."
That's trash.
Should
Is that the
start
name of this
trending.
episode?
Yeah.
I'm writing it down.
That's trash.
That's
hashtag
trash.
That's trash.
It's a trash tag.
It's a trash tag.
That's what just happened.
So
I can't say that 5 times fast.
Jamie, you said there are a lot of things that should be considered when you
Yes.
consider the person. What are some of the things you think should be factored into that equation?
Absolutely.
When you're considering the person and their
Great
situation?
question, Jason. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
So one is I like to think about the individual's work history. What do I know about them? Is it somebody who's been a company lifer? Because in that situation, I might want to approach that conversation a little bit differently. Is it somebody that's only been here for 3 weeks and something significant happened? I don't know if you know this, but you can't do X at our company. This is too far. Sometimes those situations might happen. So understanding somebody's work history is important. I think it's important to consider the amount of conversations that you've had before the decision to terminate. Are you having weekly check-ins with your employee? And so they should know where they're at from their performance. Have you told them what the consequences of not doing something, what those consequences are? Have you considered what kind of objections this person might offer in a termination conversation? Because it's going to be important to try to anticipate those so that the individuals that are involved are prepared. And then also, what are some of the needs the individual might be concerned about, right? Is it and I'm going to be really nervous because you know that their spouse has a health concern, and so what's going to happen to my insurance? You having that consideration helps you prepare better for the conversation so that you can be prepared to answer the questions that you know are going to come up or respond to the objections that someone's going to offer.
So you're saying you should not have the same script for every employee?
I'm absolutely saying that you don't have the same script for every employee.
Yeah.
There might be some bullets that are the same, like in terms of if you're offering a package and everybody who's impacted. In those situations, yes. Or you've got a separation checklist that you're going through. That part might be the same. But I think the rest of it has to be important that you consider. For example, let's say that the person that I'm terminating for some sort of behavioral reason, they've displayed some sort of behavioral concerns in meetings or with their coworkers. It's important for me to think about that person from a safety perspective as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like, here's somebody who has any of the warning signs that might be something I've been trained on from a workplace violence perspective. Now I've got to consider other things about that person. So starting by considering my history with this person and the history they have with our company and their team is really important to try to determine what are the other things that I need to put in place prior to the termination conversation.
Yeah, the ripple effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. One of the things when I went through my layoff, once they delivered the message and gave me all the things, the separation package and all the things, they said, you need to go clean out your office. And it was in the middle of the day. And I said, is there any way that I can come back, after 5 and do this? Because I don't know if I can handle cleaning out my office of 11 years in front of my peers, everybody that I've worked with.
Absolutely. So I'm going to offer a little tweak for the people who are responsible for putting terminations together for that part of the conversation. There are a lot of ways people can get their stuff. It doesn't have to be go clear out your desk with somebody standing over you, especially.
So degrading.
It is. And it's an assumption that you're going to do something scandalous when I have no evidence of that thus far.
Or you did something wrong to be monitored for.
That's right. It looks like that regardless.
So right now we're talking about what not to do.
That's right.
Another thing that we discussed when we were planning this episode was what not to do if someone has a company vehicle.
Yes.
Tell us about that, Jamie. Because I've got a story too about
my ride.
Yeah, someone who was let go who had a company vehicle and had to stand outside and wait on their wife to come pick them up.
Right.
How shaming is that? Have a plan around that.
That's right. Because you know who has a company vehicle. And that kind of goes to your separation checklist, your preparation, your consider the person, right? Mm-hmm. I remember working with a company one time that offered company vehicles, and they also allowed individuals to use the company vehicle as their personal vehicle. Okay? They just had to report which hours, what miles were personal, which ones were for business. So whenever they were going through the termination, they were like, what do we do about their shotgun that's in the back because they use that vehicle when they go hunting? Oh, well, that's, because we're going to take the car back. What would happen if we told them they could drive the car home and we were going to send someone later to pick up the car? Right? Like, I would rather do that than to have a situation where I'm like, why don't you go ahead and take your gun out of there? We'll wait for your ride. Yeah. Right?
On the curb.
Right. They're like, well, what if we took the ammunition?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where you have to try to consider the person. So we're going back to that. And then try to figure out what are the things that we can put in place. Because in some environments and in some situations, like especially around Kentucky, we've got some communities where you don't have the opportunity to use Uber or a cab or something like that. So having transportation home is a huge consideration that I think goes into making sure people are separating with dignity.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do we need to consider, what do we need to consider as an employer if you're coming into a conversation and you are the one doing the termination?
Yeah.
I think it's probably important to step back a little bit and say, it's okay that this is happening.
Yeah.
It is within the employer's right to terminate an employment.
Yes.
But we're not talking about if it's right or wrong or any of that. We're talking about having compassion and delivering the message, right?
That's right.
What are some other ways we can be compassionate? What are some things we could, like, for instance, we talked about people who walk into the room
Yeah.
and deliver the message,
Yeah.
and you don't know who they are. That's one thing you don't want
Yeah,
to do.
I feel like that's
Yeah.
#trash.
Hashtag trash.
I think that it's really important to make sure that the individuals that are delivering are knowledgeable of the person, they're knowledgeable of the situation that is warranting the separation, and they're prepared. They've probably already been part of conversations around performance or the disciplinary concern. They're familiar with that backstory and the history, and they walk in ready to have a conversation. But they're not just knowledgeable about the person or the issue. They're also knowledgeable about everything else that goes into the conversation that I think provides dignity. For example, they've prepared what they're going to say. They know who's going to say what. They have their separation checklist, which to me also has a space where it's flexible. So I can add things like transportation, right, to it, because that doesn't apply to everyone. They're prepared to answer questions that they've anticipated, like when do my benefits end? When do I get my last paycheck? Do I get paid for any unused vacation? Right, like those kinds of questions that go into it. And they're even prepared to say, here's the process that you might take for filing for unemployment, right? While we don't make the decision to approve unemployment, here's the information that you can use to go ahead and file for unemployment. In layoff situations, I've even seen some companies, especially for like the large ones, where they'll bring somebody from the unemployment office to come and answer questions, right?
So in that scenario, just this thought just popped into my head. If it's a big layoff, do you recommend, or what are your thoughts and opinions, Jamie, on should it be a one-to-one thing or should it be a group so it feels like a community instead of a personal, I don't want to say attack, but
Yeah, but they take it personally,
yeah.
whether you intend it to be that way or not.
It's hard not to. And to be honest with you, I think it really depends on the individuals that are delivering it and the relationships they have with the employees and how many people we're talking about.
Versus
I
one-to-one.
still think one-to-one is ideal. I think having a conversation with somebody, because still, regardless of whether or not the decision is something that is across the board, the individual's needs might be unique. And they might have questions that don't pertain to the group.
So
I still think one-to-one is a preferred route.
So laying people off on a Zoom call
with
thousands of people.
Yeah, no, that feels incredibly impersonal to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's just asking. I think it's, we did an episode recently about employer branding. Those are the kinds of stories that get retold and feel very impersonal. And like, you spent all this time promoting how you're a family, and then over here we ended up in this situation where you can't even talk to me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that just feels very different.
Good point.
Can I ask a question?
Always.
What if the unexpected happens? What if something goes off the rails?
Yeah.
You've seen
like the person getting laid off loses it?
they lose their minds. They get upset, or they start crying, or they pass out, or there are 1,000 different scenarios, and those talent team members who are listening to this podcast right now have seen things. So what happens when the unexpected happens? And I know every situation is unique, but
I like to first of all, you're going into these conversations because you've prepared, right? So you've got, here are the things that we're going to cover, here's who's going to say what, and then something happens that's unexpected. I like to think about it as, how would I want somebody who's very special to me treated in this moment? So here's somebody who is having a hard time accepting the news that I'm sharing with them. There have been times where I've stopped the conversation and just said, why don't we do you need a minute? Like, let's take a minute. There have been times where I've reached my hand across the table to offer consolation. There have been times where I have asked them, like, is there anything I can do to make this moment different for you? And, Molly talked about the clearing out your desk in front of all of your peers. I like to ask people, I know that you have some things that you're going to want to gather. What is the best way for you to go and get it? Is it, do you want me to go to your desk and grab your stuff? And what am I looking for?
Well, I love that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what you're doing is you're creating optionality for a person who is in a situation where they don't have many options.
That's right.
You've backed them into a corner,
Yeah.
I know I hate to say it that way, but they're in a corner.
Yeah.
It's true.
And so what is a human's natural reaction? To fight their way out of that corner.
Absolutely.
And so if you give them options, it's a lot like my 8-year-old son. He wants to feel like he's got a choice in the matter.
That's right.
You have to turn the TV off, buddy. That's not the way to do it. Hey, you have to turn the TV off. We're either going to play a game or we're going to read a book. I've got this new book. You lay out a scenario that's that's able to be stomached. And so I love the fact that you're giving them optionality when they're in a moment of feeling helpless.
That's right. And I do think there's a lot more options than people consider. So I can say things like, do you want me to clear it out? Do you want me to clear it out and mail it to you? Would that be a better way? So I can do it after everybody leaves tonight. Do you want to go and do it and I'll just meet you back in the lobby? I don't necessarily have to follow somebody. And I know why people do it. There is concern that somebody is going to display some set of emotional response that is going to cause harm to your business, the people around them, property. And maybe that's true, but you can read a lot about it in the conversation to see what options you offer.
Yeah, and there are listeners thinking, yeah, but my company has a policy.
Yeah.
I have to walk them to their desk. They get to choose one item.
This policy of choosing one item is so strange to me. Like, do I choose my coat or my keys?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If I choose my coat, I won't be cold on the walk home.
Right.
If I choose my keys, I can drive, but I'll be cold getting to the car.
Some individuals have a
Choices.
bag,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
personal bag where they carry their stuff in.
What about my cell phone? Am I leaving it?
What about my medications on my
That's
desk?
right. I just think that's also hashtag trash.
I was just going to say.
Yes. Hashtag trash.
Well, and no matter how bad we feel delivering this news, we have to remember they're feeling worse.
Yeah.
No matter how bad we feel doing
yes,
this job,
definitely.
they are in a worse position than you. So
Yeah.
any level of compassion you can bring to the situation. Challenge your corporate policies and guidelines.
100%.
Go up to the leadership and say, I know we are supposed to walk them out and have them choose one item.
Yep.
There are exceptions that are not fair
Yep.
to the employee that we're terminating. How do we handle those? And then give them a situation. Like we said, they've got their medication in their desk, they've got their keys for their car, and they've got their coat over here.
Tell me what
it's
you
cold
need.
outside. Which one do I tell them to pick? Or do I say they can actually take 3? Am I breaking corporate policy if I tell them they can take their keys and their coat?
Right.
And then they say, wow, that's a silly policy. Yeah, why don't you suggest some language? Or walk to them with the solution. I've got the new language written. What do you think about this?
What do you think about
I worked with Parcel to create this language.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, I think that's always when you're talking to leadership, if you have an issue, come with a solution. Don't come with a problem. They don't have time for that.
Don't
And they're
be
not
that
trained
guy.
in it.
Do
So-
not be that guy.
Yeah.
I would like to wrap up today with I want to tell you our best case scenario that I saw with a company. Okay. Because when we talk about considering the person and we talk about dignity, one of the main reasons that you're getting a negative reaction in those meetings is because people are in a moment of panic. They're thinking about the bill that's due, how they're going to tell their spouse, how they're going to find a job. I don't know how to find a job. I've been here for 20 years and I've never applied for a job online. Like, there is panic that comes from, I've got to put some plans in place I didn't even know I was going to have to put together, right? Mm-hmm. If we go into the situation assuming that those are the things that people are concerned about, and we are armed with something like outplacement, just going to use that as an example. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it is services provided by individuals that are familiar with what it takes to best position myself to find employment elsewhere. There was one company that I worked with that we offered it to anybody who left regardless of the reason. Now, from a company perspective, it was minimal cost. It was high degree of service. It allowed somebody a service to be able to revise their resume, brush it up, understand how to put together their LinkedIn profile, help them think about how to interview and how to search for a job and how to lean on their network and identify transferable skills, all the things that it takes to find a new job, right? We offered that regardless. It's lower impact to your unemployment. It reduces your risk of litigation, or at least exposure from litigation or the likelihood of litigation. It's one of those that says, I understand we are where we are. I still care about you as a person. I want you to be successful. I want you to be able to care for your family. And so here's some resources that help you get to that spot. And I think that that is best in class. I think that that is something that completely shifts the experience for the person on the other side of the termination conversation.
And definitely relates back to the entire life cycle of the employee.
And I can tell you from experience, whenever you're looking at your individuals that stay after a layoff, and you're able to say, I want to tell you what individuals who were impacted by this received, talk about brand building. Like, we have an experience where even if things don't work out, we still want to help you get where you go next successfully.
Yeah.
Right?
I've handed letters of recommendation to people
Yeah.
as they're leaving the door. I wrote this for you. This is talking about all the things that you do well. If you need me to customize this for a specific job you're applying for, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I mean, think outside of the box like that. Like, what can I do for this person to help them feel like they're already getting back on track as they leave the building?
Absolutely.
So, as we wrap today's workforce therapy file on separation with dignity, breaking up is hard to do.
It is. It's not easy for anybody.
No, it's never fun.
No.
Especially when it's not necessarily something that's been in your control. But making sure that you can walk away if it is something that that individual could have done differently while they were employed with you, that you've made every effort to help them. The biggest thing that I can say as we walk away and close this file is it's hard to say that this is business, it's not personal, because at the end of the day, we're all humans.
And it's all personal.
It's all personal. Even if it's a business decision, whether it be because of performance or layoff or the business in and of itself, you got to have some human conversation when you walk into this situation and walking away from it. So thank you, Jamie, for your guidance and advice today and helping us walk through something that isn't always fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's never fun. Jason?
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah. So, Jim, close that file.
Thanks for listening to the Workforce Therapy Files. We hope you learned something new, and we're thankful for the time that you spent with us today. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us. Our contact information is listed in the show notes. Until next time, keep your head up.